Good evening, students. Again, apologies for the skipping the office hours on Tuesday. I'm fighting a health issue right now, and I'm still not 100%. But for 742, I was able to get all of the current submissions that have been turned in, all of those graded. And so I wanted to share back just really quick a couple of things. First of all, for weeks that we have a forum posting, make sure you have an initial posting and you have two peer responses. Where people lost points the most was in not getting those two peer responses. And so basically, that initial post is worth 10 points, and each peer response is worth another 5 points for a total of 20 points. So if you skip one peer, you're going to get cut 5. If you skip both peers, you're going to get cut 10. First of all, first and foremost, you have to have the 3 for a week that we have those forum postings. Second thing is watch the length. For the length of some of these, some people were just trying to put in just a couple of sentences. Now, first week you got warned on that. Second week, if you were really lacking in the depth of your post, also this applies to your written paper too as well. You were docked points on that too as well. So at this level of study, it's expected that you're going to have complete answers, more thorough answers, not one or two sentences in order to answer a question. So be careful with that. If you're in doubt, put a little bit more content into it and try not to be descriptive. Descriptive can be a part of it, so you can explain what a particular thing is, but then go into the application piece of it, how that's going to be used or how that's relevant to somebody studying this area or how it would be relevant to your final project. So that's big as well. On the written assignments, length is one of the biggest problems, but also watch that APA. So for the most part, everybody gave me APA formatting enough that it had a title page, it had a reference page, and the content was double spaced. If you didn't have a title page, then you got a 5 points off right off the bat. If any APA formatting issues, you got basically 5 points off the top. Now, if it was close, like so some students forgot to do the double spacing, but they still had a pretty good paper, they had enough content in there, I didn't deduct the extra points for that. But watch your APA formatting. We have to obey the APA formatting in this coursework. So your assignments you turn in, you have to have that. Any questions, please reach out to me on that. Excuse me. Now, finally, for this week here is going to be a little bit more on the descriptive side, and I think that the introduction video, which is posted, should walk you through a lot of the details of it. So if you think about this, this is the consumer of your system. They're going to use systems like Hive. They're going to use systems like Impala in order to query that data, to store that data. So you don't need to go into 5 or 10 pages of what is Hive and explicitly tell how you use the Hive query language. You have to kind of explain it in a very broad sense, the descriptive piece of it, but then talk about how that could be integrated into a design, either on a cloud, either in one of these enterprise data hubs that we had talked about, or in a traditional data warehouse. If you were going to do a traditional data warehouse and store that in Hive, for instance, how would the user interact with that? Now, one other component I want to draw your attention to is something called the Hadoop user interface. And so some flavors of Hadoop come with this automatic. Some of these you have to download and compile for it. But basically the Hadoop user interface is a web-based interface that is a wrapper that sits on top of a lot of these technologies. So an end user could interact with these various systems through the Hadoop user interface, as opposed to having to go individually on the tools, actually log into the server, etc. So I do not believe that was mentioned in the assignment rubric or in the the previous discussion. So just to be sure that we get that in there too as well, I'll include a link with some additional data on the Hadoop user interface, user experience. I'm sorry, that particular component. So you can choose whether or not you want to use that in your discussion as well. For those of you who have already turned in your week 3 assignments, if you did not include that, don't worry about it. That's another component which you can bring to this. But you would have probably also found this with just some simple internet searches off of Hadoop. you'll probably find these types of components. Now, naturally, when you talk about some of the web platforms, AWS or Azure, they have a slightly different type of user interfaces in order to address this. So if you're using something like AWS, you may or may not use the Hue interface in order to get into it. You may just use AWS's defaults in order to get into it. So that's just some additional things to think about. If you have any questions, I'll be available during the office hours today. Won't be giving a formal lecture or anything like that. Just available to answer questions if you have questions. But overall, I see the submissions have been coming in have been fantastic. Keep doing up that good work. For these items which I've mentioned, just make some adjustments. And as always, if you have any questions, just reach out. Thanks a lot.